Hello, everyone, and welcome. 2-point conversion. Back here for the 2021 NFL season. We're here, and we've already gone through a slate of games. Here we are on Monday, September 13th for Week 1, the final game of the week. I'm Kyle Senra, and joining me, co-host from last year, the reunion all here, Gladys, who was hosting the 2-point of the offseason, did a phenomenal job of that. So Gladys, glad to be talking with you again.
Thanks, Kyle. I don't know about the phenomenal job part, but thanks for the kind words.
Oh, I second that. I second that phenomenal job part.
Oh, thanks, Doc. Happy to be here. Happy to be here. Happy to be reunited with both you and Doc and Hamid from yesterday. But again, 2 days in a row, you can't beat that. Sad that Dan isn't here, but you know what? I'm sure he's watching. And Dan, we miss you for the first week. So, but we're going to do this, Dan, in Dan's honor. We're going to kill this.
Yeah,
we're going to crush it.
The B League, not to be for week 1 here with us, unfortunately, but with us in spirits and us with an amazing show sheet as always. You can we can call him the producer, I guess, if we really want to inflate his ego. But the title Doctor, I guess, is more impressive than producer, and that's what we Dr. James Ferretti, the fantasy sports doc. So welcome, Doc.
Yeah, thanks,
welcome.
Kyle.
It's your show. You're a co-host. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm glad to be back here. Year 2 of the Monday night show. Very happy to be here. We made it to week 1. Most of us have survived. We do have some injuries to talk about, but we'll get to that. But yeah, it's really good to see you guys. Really good to be here.
Absolutely. And
probably.
Yeah, gee, I wonder why. Oh yeah, the Raiders are playing tonight, people. That is a Monday night preview. We'll get to the Raiders talk first. So, Doc, one of the things you did in the offseason was part of the Dynasty Gambit, and that was, of course, I was part of that too. And our co-host and host of the Dynasty Gambit, continuing that tradition on Thursday nights, Hamid, the FF Junkie. So, welcome aboard the 2-point conversion.
I'm excited to get this started, man. Real quick, Josh Jacobs has been declared officially active, so he is playing tonight.
Okay, right. Interesting. Thank you for the Monday night news already. The heads up. All right, so we're a good start, I suppose.
Well, I'm with that because I have Josh Jacobs in a league. I think I have him in a Scott Fishbowl. Just a PSA, which I didn't go by. If you guys have Monday night players, put them in your flex position because I didn't do it. So if Josh Jacobs didn't play tonight, I would have been 0 points, which I need. So PSA announcement. That's all I got.
You hate to see that.
Players and flex.
Yes, because I have Josh Jacobs in the league and he's in my flex spot. So if he didn't play, I would have had Bryan Edwards ready to go. But yeah, it would have been tough to get any other running back. So, So exactly, case in point, because if something happened, I would have at least been prepared. So Gladys is speaking the truth there. It's a lot easier when they're in your flex spots. And yeah, absolutely never play your Thursday night players in your flex spot. I think that's kind of a given, but always, again, leave those flex for the Sunday night, Monday night players as late as possible. You don't get bonus points for someone because they're in your RB1 spot as opposed to your flex spot. So I guess who's an elite player tonight? I guess it's all the tight ends. So that's a moot point. If let's say you're going to Sunday night and like you have David Montgomery as your RB1. In a couple leagues too as my RB1, but he was in my flex spot just in case something happened weird Sunday night. I needed to change in case I could have had a chance to put a wide receiver rather than a running back. So I guess just examples of that because injuries happen, and I guess injuries is as always where we start. So the doctor is in, and there's a lot of players needing to visit the doctors. This week and in recent weeks. So we're gonna talk about some news. So Josh Jacobs, that was one of them. So. Doc, what are you expecting? Or do you think Jacobs will be the lead guy? Like, do you think this illness will slow him down, or are you expecting close to what would have been a normal workload for him?
I think it's going to be a normal workload for him. But the question is, and this was kind of the debate all offseason, is what is the new normal for the Raiders and how much is Kenyon Drake going to be involved anyway? And I was kind of thinking that it was going to be kind of a similar split situation, maybe kind of what we saw with DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams with Detroit. So I think it's going to be kind of a 50-50 type split. That's kind of my gut feeling on it. But I don't think whatever this illness is, I don't think it's really going to limit him for that. I think it's going to be more game script and the presence of Drake and how Coach Gruden wants to run the offense.
Okay. Does anyone have any Gladys or Hamid about Josh Jacobs? You've already kind of said. I'm going to play him over Bryan Edwards, I think.
Well, my choice was Peyton Barber. I had to pick up last minute, so yeah, I'm playing Josh Jacobs regardless. And even if he was out, I probably would have played him over Peyton Barber. So yeah, he's in.
And at the end of it, though, at the end of the day, you have Josh Jacobs. Who are you starting him for at this point?
I know you'd have him low in the rankings where he's not a starter, Hamid. So you business as usual is to bench him.
Of course.
So that was not the right person to ask for that. You would have said, yeah. So because you probably don't even roster him anywhere, so you can't even ask him what you do.
Yeah,
in your teams.
But if you draft him, of course, he is your flex, or maybe he's your RB2. But of course, luckily he's playing, he is active. The workload is going to be interesting. Coming off an illness, I'm not sure what exactly the illness was, what the impact was, but I'm curious to see what that workload looks like.
So, we're the 2-point conversion, but some love. Yes, the point after going up and saying, look at this crew. Appreciate the support, Julian. So thanks for that. And so we'll talk about the next player who is part of one of the teams playing tonight from Baltimore now, Rashad Bateman needing core surgery in the offseason. So, Doc, do you know anything about the timeline for that and when we can expect him to make his NFL debut?
Yeah, so if you remember when this happened back in August, they kind of immediately ruled Rashad Bateman to be week to week, which was scary. And then sure enough, I think I talked about it with Jeff and Stefania Bell on the Armchair Show right around when it happened, when he ended up getting the surgery. And they kind of gave him humble brag. They kind of gave him a 6 to 8 week timeline. And that was in mid-August. So it's looking like we might be able to see him back on the field towards the end of the month. So right around week 4 or 5. And I'm really kind of getting excited for that potential. So it looks like everything's on schedule and he could really kind of, no pun intended, but hit the ground running in a couple of weeks. So excited for that. Not too dissimilar to the situation with Curtis Samuel potentially. I'm actually more optimistic about Rashad Bateman's situation than I am about Curtis Samuel, and we can definitely talk about that.
Let's transition to that one right now then. So what do you have to say about Curtis Samuel?
So it looks like it's a pretty similar type of injury. The only difference is that Rashad Bateman got hurt and they took him out. He got surgery right away, and now he's rehabbing and he's got his time frame for recovery. With Curtis Samuel, he was kind of half in, half out, off and on, practice for a couple of days, back out, would re-aggravate it, go back out, and just kind of, playing that game of it's getting better, it's getting worse, it's getting better, getting worse. Now he's on the IR prior to week 1, and he's out for at least 3 weeks, and he might not be recovered when he comes back. So he could still need surgery, which would then put him on the same timeline as Rashad Bateman with a 6 to 8 week time frame and knock him out for an additional month and a half or 2 months. That's not off the table yet. So I was worried when it was going on, and I know Hamid, we talked about it on the Dynasty Gambit. I kind of wrote in, I was like, oh, this is getting scary. And then sure enough, he goes on IR, I think this the next day or the day after. He might not be back in 3 weeks. He might end up needing surgery anyway. So not out of the woods yet with Curtis Samuel, definitely starting to get worried about that.
So if someone is impatient and cuts either one, Bateman or Samuel, maybe even both get cut, you're prioritizing picking up Bateman over Samuel for sure then.
Yeah. Just because of the upside, number one, and number two, because we kind of have an established idea of what's going on, and it seems like things are progressing the way that we would hope. With Curtis Samuel, we still have a lot of questions and not a lot of answers, unfortunately. And that was before Fitzmagic decided to, leave half of his leg on the field yesterday. So
that might you're transitioning so well. I did want to get to my listener, John,
by all means,
just mentioning that, pressing what happened to Henry. Now, at first I thought he'd talk about Henry Ruggs, but I realized he's talking about Derrick Henry, of course, and he obviously has Lamar's team because he says, "Wow, I hope Lamar is a great game." So, the question is, would you trade Henry for Cook? I think I would do that in a heartbeat, but I was also drafting Dalvin Cook ahead of Derrick Henry. I'm not sure that the Dalvin Cook manager would want to do that, but if you can, I'd do it 100%. I'd rather trust the Cook having the pass catching role in that he'll present me consistency. I mean, like, look against the game against the Bengals. I thought perfect game script. He'll just torch through that awful defense and he'll run it 20, 25 times. He didn't, but then got involvement through the passing game and have a great week, but made up double-digit points, did score a touchdown, but also kind of upped that floor a little bit because of the pass catching. So I would definitely do it Cook over Henry. Does anyone have Henry over Cook or want to offer any other reasons why they agree with me on Dalvin Cook?
You just described what happened to Henry. I mean, they were down, 24-6 by halftime, and Henry is not involved in the passing game. So there was game script is what happened to Henry. I would do Cook over Henry just because of his ability to be relevant in the passing game where Henry is not.
And just to add to what Gladys was saying real quick, first of all, even with the negative game script, Dalvin Cook still was able to get involved in the passing game. Derrick Henry in a negative game script, he had 4 total targets in that game. So, and to God's point, yes, they fell behind 24-6. That's what happened to Derrick Henry. And he was on the field for only 60% of the offensive snaps. So not only did he lose target, he didn't get targets or touches, but he also lost snap. Versus Dalvin Cook, it's the other way around. Regardless of game script, he's on the field and involved. So it's going to be tough to make that trade, John. Unfortunately, you may have to give up more. Honestly, if I'm a Cook owner, I'm not trading Dalvin Cook. Unless I'm getting CMC. That's the only other player I'm willing to trade Dalvin Cook for.
Yeah, I would have to. I think. Now, okay, let's talk about what's that plus price. Like, are you willing to give a play starter for you in order to get that RB upgrade and say give up 2 starters for 1? We'll say like a back end flex starter. So maybe what would have been maybe your 8th or maybe 10th round pick. So you can insert kind of any running back, wide receiver. Sorry?
Who the rest of his team is. I guess it depends on who the rest of his team is. Who is his RB2? Who is his who are wide receivers? Who's his quarterback? I mean, he's going to have to. I personally think he would have to give up a lot, even in just a plain redraft league, to get Cook for Henry. Unless you can bamboozle someone and then go for it. But I can't see that happening.
Yeah, I guess the only thing is, did Cook go after Henry in the draft? But of course, you drafted Henry, so you value Henry more than Cook, but maybe not everyone else does. But yeah, in most instances, in most drafts I was in, Cook was always going ahead of Henry. It was pretty consensus, the 102 behind McCaffrey, Hamid had mentioned. So yeah, so I think it's just if you want to do it bad enough, you're gonna have to go with whatever the other manager's price is, because it's really, we can talk about whatever we think be, but it's whatever the Dalvin Cook manager has. They're the one that has to basically set that price, and it's whether you're willing to pay that price or not. So just, I guess, inquire for sure. I think go, try and be aggressive and send some offers and find out what that price is, and if it's too much for you to be willing to pay for, I'm fine riding out Henry, knowing that he's going to have big weeks, but just this might have been hopefully one of his game scripts of the season, but we'll see.
Yeah, I think things change a lot if he has a monster game. Right now it's kind of a sell low because he didn't have a good game and the game script kind of phased him out. If you want to make that move and you want to move off of him, the question I would ask is, are you want to move off of him because he had a crappy week 1? Like, everybody can have a bad day. He could just as easily come out next week and rush for 180 yards and 2 touchdowns. So then it's a different story. Then the guy with Dalvin Cook, if he has a down game, he might come calling to you. And then you have to decide if you want to move off him at that point. So that's kind of the way I look at it.
Yeah, I know we do have to move on, but I'll add one more note. Derrick Henry, it's like Doc said, he hit the nail right there on the head. It's just one game, John. I would not worry too much. Remember, this is a player who led the league in rushing last year. So not only that, keep in mind one thing. I think Derrick Henry will be fine, but keep in one thing. Derrick Henry's playoff schedule is brutal. He gets the Steelers, Niners, and Dolphins. 3 weeks after all your fantasy playoffs. Look to later on the season, look to move him for someone else who has an easier schedule. Just something to keep in mind for you.
Also, remember that Derrick Henry always starts slow. Like, it's that Alabama curse. They always start slow and then they pick up. But look who he has. I mean, he has a really solid. He has Kelsey. He has Robert Woods, who.
Yeah.
Cooper Kupp, he needs
He
to
had a
like.
touchdown though. He did have a touchdown.
And yeah, I mean, it's not that bad of a. I would hold on to Henry for a while anyway, because you're gonna have to give up probably Lamar and Kelsey or Lamar. I would if I was trading Dalvin Cook. You'd have to give me Kelsey or Lamar or both for Henry in that trade, which I wouldn't be willing to.
Yeah, well, I would. I mean, it depends on, because I think at that point, if you're giving up like 2 potential first round picks in Henry and Kelsey, I'd expect more back than Cook as well. So that would also depend on what's that second piece. Maybe do they have Kittle or Waller? Then I'm kind of more inclined to maybe make that switch, go from the downgraded tight end but upgraded running back. But even then, that's I don't think I'd want to give up Kelsey. I don't think I'd want to add any of these players that he listed to Henry again. So it'd depend on like the back end starters. Ayuk's maybe the closest, but even then, maybe Henry and he's saying he does have Waller. That might be a way to go about it. Downgrade from Kelsey to Waller to get Henry and Cooks. Maybe you can even get like a third piece traded in. You can upgrade another depth running back. I think it's at least explorable, but again, I think we'll leave it at that, just because the trade talks can get endless. So that it is between you and the Dalvin Cook manager to kind of decide that price. But I think there's a potential there to make that happen. Ryan Fitzpatrick. When we were hearing hip distance, that's like potentially season ending. Tua Tagovailoa just not that long ago kind of echoes of that. So Doc, is that a kind of a massive overreaction, me saying that? What's happening with
No, it's not a massive overreaction, unfortunately. So when I heard that he left the game yesterday and I saw a hip subluxation, I immediately had a visceral reaction, like this could be really bad. And so he got his MRI today, and the initial timetable that they gave is 6 to 8 weeks. And, I thought about Tua Tagovailoa. I also thought about Bo Jackson, who also had a really bad hip dislocation where the hip kind of came out of the socket, went back in the socket, and it ended up being career ending. This is not that bad, but just to kind of take you through it a little bit, when you talk about like, okay, so the hip comes out of the socket and it goes back in, what's the big deal? As opposed to a dislocation where it comes completely out of the socket and then has to be kind of placed back in. A subluxation, it kind of partially comes out of the socket, goes back in on its own. So, you may think, well, it's back in the socket, everything's all good, right? And they didn't have to do anything. The problem is it's not that simple. When the joint kind of comes out of the socket and then goes back in, whether it's the shoulder, the wrist, the knee, the hip, the ankle, any of those joints like that, they're held together by ligaments and muscles, and there's cartilage around the joints and blood vessels, and all of those kind of get disrupted. And even though the joint comes out, goes back in, and it's lined up the way it's supposed to be, you get loosening of the joint, and the joint can become unstable. So after they looked at the MRI, it didn't sound like he was going to need surgery for this, but that may still be the case down the road as this thing kind of heals. If he has instability in his hip joint, he's not going to be able to walk, much less run and throw and things like that. So this is really bad, and this is potentially season ending, and I'm not particularly optimistic about it. And if I was single quarterback league, I'm not playing around with this. I mean, he's going to be out a minimum of 6 to 8 weeks. That's kind of best case scenario. Any setbacks along the way, he's going to need surgery, and I think he's going to be out for the year. So if I was a Fitzpatrick owner, I'm kind of making plans to not have Fitzpatrick on the team for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, I think in single quarterback, I think the only benefit is he was probably so cheap that he was almost practically at a streamer price, where you've got to drop him, you don't mind getting someone else. So at least it's that. I think in superflex leagues it could be more detrimental. I know I've got Taylor Heineke in a superflex league, and I think the fallout of that is I just had a couple of trade offers today, and I can't even get a second. So I think I'm holding him. If he does well in some starts, probably honestly I think I'm going to play him. I'm hoping on Justin Fields in that league, so I'm probably have no choice but to play him for that Thursday night game against the Giants, and then hoping that later on in the season, after he gets some starts, maybe I can get a second for him then. But yeah, I think he should be worth a second, especially if the news comes out at some point that Fitzpatrick's done for the season, I think in Superflex leagues should be able to sell Heineke for a second. So that's kind of my playbook right now.
One question I had for you guys, I wanted to kick this to you, because if we're thinking that Fitzmagic's going to be out for the foreseeable future, one of the appeals to that offense was, his ability to throw the deep ball, and he's not really a check down quarterback type guy. But how do you see Heineke? How do you guys see Heineke kind of changing the dynamics of that offense, and maybe more passes to the running backs, maybe more work for Logan Thomas in the middle of the field, just some thoughts there. Like, how does that land with you guys?
Gladys, you want to take this, or?
I think it helps Logan Thomas. I think Logan Thomas is, although Logan Thomas stock was high anyway, but I think it helps Logan Thomas. I think I read something where, and Hamid, you probably know this for sure, that Thomas wasn't targeted with Fitzpatrick in, or his targets were half of what Heineke threw him, or something like that. Like Heineke actually targeted Logan Thomas, and Fitzpatrick wasn't really looking his way. So yeah, I think it helps Logan Thomas. As far as running backs, I'm not really sure about that, but I definitely think it helps Logan Thomas the most on that team, and I think it hurts. I mean, Adam Humphries wasn't really a big draw anyway, but I think the only reason Adam Humphries was there was for the Fitzpatrick connection. So I don't think it hurts or hinders him one way or the other. Scary Terry he's the Allen Robinson of that division. Like, he's going to play good no matter who his quarterback is. So yeah, I think it doesn't hurt his stock either, but I think it definitely helps Logan Thomas. What's up, Evan? How are you?
Evan, thanks for watching, buddy.
Friday night cheat sheet as part of the Going for Two network. And Hamid, go ahead.
Yeah, just to comment, and Glass, you're absolutely right. So if you go back to the wild card game last year against the Bucs, Taylor Heineke actually made Cam Sims the number one wide receiver. He actually led the team in receiving in that game, who happens to be on this team still, by the way. So if you're in deeper leagues, 14, 16-man leagues, picking up Cam Sims is not a bad option. Also, I think the Glass is absolutely right. This definitely helps Logan Thomas. I don't know if he targeted Logan Thomas or not. I didn't go that in deep into that game just yet. But it definitely helps Logan Thomas, I think, a ton. Also, Heineke's rushing upside does have to make defenses a little bit more careful and wary about him running the ball, which I think does help the efficiency of Antonio Gibson. However, I don't think it impacts Gibson's target share or opportunity share. I think it's a pretty lateral impact to the running back core. I think it's an upgrade for the receiving core, though, and Logan Thomas.
Yeah, because I think the quick takeaway from the Washington game is that it was Gibson basically for most of the snaps, pass catching and all. McKissick target, Jared Patterson had one target, neither caught a pass. Gibson actually led Washington in targets in week 1.
Yeah, 5 targets.
So Doc, your call of him as a top 5 dynasty running back might, and he might be valued there by the end of the year, because that was the one big question: is he going to be involved in the passing game? And now that he is, it's probably. I mean, I think for Logan Thomas and Gibson, I don't even think it's Heineke necessarily that's the biggest benefactor. I think it's the lack of Curtis Samuel, because that was someone they paid to come in free agency. They had a plan for Curtis Samuel, and his absence is going to allow for more. So I think that more than anything is what makes them the biggest beneficiary. And we're talking back to injuries. So a couple more here. I want to talk about Raheem Mostert from the 49ers, knee injury. So Doc, what do we know about that?
Yeah, so actually they got some good news with his knee injury, where they said that it wasn't an ACL, and they felt confident about that pretty quickly. After he got some imaging, it turns out that they were right. So that's the good news. The bad news is that he tore cartilage in his knee, and he's going to be out for what it looks like about 8 weeks, and that's a very rough timetable. So certainly more to come on that. But I guess the way that I look at it, and I wanted to talk to you guys about this, how you think it impacts things, because if you drafted Raheem Mostert, you kind of had to have the attitude, I think anyway, if you're being realistic, like, I'm going to ride this train until the wheels fall off. And unfortunately, the wheels fall off before he made it around the block. He didn't even get to get on the highway. Like, he went a couple of blocks and the wheel fell right off. That's it. So I feel like if you have Raheem Mostert on your team, you got to move on at this point. Regardless of even if he comes back in 8 weeks, which is kind of a best case scenario, what's the landscape going to look like at that point? It was already a multi-headed monster in San Francisco, and Trey Sermon hadn't even been involved in week 1. He's almost certainly going to be involved going forward, I would imagine. Elijah Mitchell has established himself as he was kind of the last man standing after Mostert went out, and he did pretty well with his touches. So looks like he's carved himself out a little role. Kyle, your boy JaMychal Hasty's involved. Jeff Wilson is still hanging around on the pup, and he's probably going to make it back before Raheem Mostert does. So, what role is he going to potentially come back to, even if he does come back in 8 weeks? What are things going to look like at that point? I think it's just kind of the law of diminishing returns is taking over. You took a shot. It didn't work out, and now if you keep him on your roster, you're kind of just throwing good money after bad. I don't know. How's that land with you guys?
Yeah, I don't know what to say because I kind of avoided him completely in drafts. I felt the draft price was too high, and maybe the Sermon draft price was too high as well. But I think it's this is someone that I if you've got the space on for him, sure, but he's probably one of my first cuts. If I were to have my team, he'd be one of my first cuts to go pick up other upside players that are establishing themselves. A tight end that's getting targets, those value. I'm not afraid to just cut him now, and thinking that there's probably not much upside late in the season anyway. Maybe there is. I mean, maybe they feel like, okay, we get him at the end of the year, we need to get him everything just because we're at the end of the season. I can kind of see that scenario, but if if Mitchell and Sermon and Hasty are having success, I don't think they'll go away from them either.
Yeah,
so, I'm fine.
You got to get to the playoffs first. It's week 1. Listen, I'm all about thinking ahead and being optimistic, but you got to get there. And bye weeks, injuries, COVID, all this other stuff, like that roster spot, the opportunity cost of keeping him and kind of hoping for 3 months down the line that it could turn into something, like that's a big cost for potentially a zero return. So you really got to contemplate that. If it's a free IR spot, then sure. But if it's keeping you from picking literally anybody else up, I would just take a shot. I'd start churning and burning and working the waiver wire before I thought about keeping Mostert for 2 months.
I have Mostert
in
2 leagues, and both leagues are IR leagues. So I have him. Like I was that person that said, I'm going to ride him until, 3 weeks when he gets hurt, and unfortunately it was like 3 minutes. So
yeah, exactly.
I
mean, you got in on the ground floor on Raheem Mostert. The problem is it was only a 1-story building.
Exactly. So I have him. He's on the IR 1 for sure, and then the other one I'm not really sure. I think it has IR spots. If it doesn't, I'm just going to drop him and try to pick up literally anyone who it looks like they might enter a game. Because
sorry.
What? No,
I was going to say back to the cheat sheet co-host Evan talking about the beat writers in San Francisco totally screwed us. I think that's unfair because I do wonder how secretive Shanahan and that offense is, like purposely not revealing stuff. But it does seem like he made a comment. Was it Saturday or Friday that kind of indicated that, like, hinted that Sermon wasn't going to play, and that he said that Mitchell and Hasty were playing better through the preseason and through training camp. I think he had made that comment, so it wasn't like completely out of nowhere for it, to be inactive, Sermon that is. But it seems like, this came out of nowhere in this weekend. Right? Like before this weekend, we really had no hints of this, but we kind of get that Saturday and then the inactive on Sunday. One last injury to talk about. It's Jerry Jeudy. High ankle sprain here. Hamid,
what do you got? Hamid?
Yeah, just one quick thing I want to point out to everybody listening here. Mitchell did get 60% of the snaps, offensive snap share. Now keep in mind, last year, this team just churns running back. So don't drop Trey Sermon if you have him. You want to pick up Elijah Mitchell? Yes, absolutely, he's a must add. But don't drop Trey Sermon just because he's not, like the doc said, he's gonna get his chance now. So even if he didn't show in training camp, he has the opportunity. So hold on to Trey Sermon. Don't drop it. That's all it's had.
Yeah, that's fair. Again, and I think it's all dependent on, what you need that roster spot for, how many you have, and And then, speaking of the whole Ayuk situation as well, Ayuk did he even get a target?
Surprise. That was a big surprise. And apparently it came out after the fact. I think with some of this stuff, and you guys can maybe speak to this a little bit too, like as you tease through it and things happen, like they become apparent in retrospect. But I kind of question how much ability we have as fantasy football players to be able to act prospectively with regard to these things, like to predict them, because coaches talk a lot. The media spins things differently. Analysts spin things differently. And it's almost like it becomes like confirmation bias. Like you hear something that fits the narrative that you want it to fit, then you go with it, and everything else you kind of ignore. So if you were on the Trey Sermon train, then you were just looking for reasons for him to be the bell cow right out of the gate. And if somebody said something that was contrarian to that, you kind of just ignored it, and vice versa. So, that was a surprise. Ayuk was a surprise too. And then it comes out today that apparently Ayuk had a significantly, looked worse over time, after his hamstring injury and things like that. He never kind of made it back. And now it makes sense, but we didn't have that information at the time. So, I was doing best ball drafts, and I was taking him in the 4th and 5th round and thinking everything was fine.
So this is tough. Yeah, I know. I definitely started Ayuk in our dynasty league together, and I may hint back to that later on because that matchup's still going tonight. Anyway, so last injured player, Jerry Jeudy, high ankle sprain, and we words we hear, but yeah, Doc. We talked a lot about high ankle sprains last season. So, but for anyone who hasn't tuned in yet, give us the down low.
Yeah, I'll give the abridged version. I think the only thing worse than hearing high ankle sprain is midfoot sprain. Then we think Liz Frank, and then maybe you're getting Travis Etienne. But this is not great. So, when we talk about ankle sprains, around the ankle, you have multiple ligaments. You have the ligaments that are lower down on the ankle, and then you have another set of ligaments that are a little bit higher up. So with a regular kind of garden variety ankle sprain, it involves the ligaments that are furthest down, closest to the foot. And those are the ones where, generally speaking, if it's not too bad, players can make it back from that 1, 2, 3 weeks and generally be okay. They can wrap it up, numb it up, rub some dirt on it, have the players get back out there. With a high ankle sprain, the issue is that it involves those lower ligaments, it involves the other set of higher ligaments, and it involves all the space in between in the leg, the space in between the two bones as it goes up the leg. And that's a big area of injured tissue. And it's just really hard to kind of rush that. So, like I said, with a low ankle sprain, you can kind of brace it, tape it, numb it up, and gut it out. With a high ankle sprain, you really can't. And a 4 to 5 week kind of minimum is what you're dealing with, and potentially longer. And generally speaking, if anybody tries to come back from that shorter time frame than that, it usually doesn't end well. They're either severely limited, if they're able to even make it back, or they get re-injured and then they're out for another 4, 5, 6 weeks after that. So that's what we're dealing with here. I think 4 to 5 weeks kind of best case scenario is reasonable. So my question to you guys is, who are you looking at in this now rejuvenated Teddy Bridgewater-led Denver offense to kind of step in and fill the role of the vacated targets of Jerry Jeudy, who was a darling as far as like people were all over him, myself included. I mean, this one's really disappointing, but we got to move on and we got to make plans for the future. And it looks like we're not going to have Jerry Jeudy for a month or a month and a half. So what are you guys pivoting to at this point? Like who's exciting you as far as pickups and things like that?
I like Noah Fant, but he's not really a wide receiver. He's a tight end, but I would go Noah Fant. I think Hamler and Patrick. And I meant to say this before I started. I live out here in Denver, and what the doc was saying about the narratives, you have to be very careful with, because the narrative out here now is that, it looks so much worse when he got hurt than what happened to him. So he's going to be back sooner rather than later, which I don't think is the case. I kind of go with that high ankle sprain. He's going to be out for a while. So yeah, I'm going with Noah Fant. He looked good. He looked good yesterday. And I think Bridgewater's going to, he kind of evenly distributed the targets anyway once Judy went out, except for Noah Fant. And Noah Fant led the team in targets the whole time. And it fits a Teddy Bridgewater kind of not check down, but, big-bodied middle field. I can get it to him, and he can make yards after catch.
Yeah, because Fant did lead the team in targets that game.
Right.
Jerry Jeudy was second, and actually up leading them in receiving yards and catches. The box score is a little tough to tell who it will ultimately end up being. I expect as he gets healthier, Cortland's going to be more involved. But, Sutton and Fant were both drafted. They're on rosters. You can't go and pick them up. So from, in terms of actionable advice, which maybe is what you were looking for, Doc, who to pick up.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about.
Is it Tim Patrick or KJ Hamler? I think it depends what you're looking for. To be Tim Patrick probably is the much safer floor. It seems like it would be almost maybe now if he's not top 3 on the team in receptions every week. Between Fant, Sutton, and himself, it feels like it's going to be one of those 3 every week. But if you're looking for a more high upside, big player, can he play them in the good matchups, the shootout type matchups? I think Hamler's got that ability. So it really does depend what you're looking for. I think the Jerry Jeudy replacement would say Patrick, because Jerry Jeudy, high floor of targets. So yeah, if you're looking for that role, I think Patrick is the guy. Hamid, want to say anything?
Yeah, sure. So I do think Tim Patrick is the guy, and here's why. From an air yard standpoint, Teddy Bridgewater last year, remember, he was on the Carolina Panthers, who had a player called DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson, both who can, fly down the field. And he was 20th and he was 20th in air yards and 30th in air yards completed. So for those listening, air yards, of course, is the distance that the ball covers each time the quarterback throws the ball. So keeping that into consideration, I don't expect that to change anytime soon. KJ Hamler is the field stretcher, and Tim Patrick is a bit more the possession receiver. We can go back to even last year to find some proof of that as well. For me, it has to be a priority to add Tim Patrick. If you're looking for the ceiling, though, it is KJ Hamler. But give me the safe floor of Tim Patrick.
Nice.
I would also caution people that this is the Denver Broncos, too. So they are going to be a run-first team with the 2 running backs that they have. So when you pick one of them up, don't expect Devontae Adams and DeAndre Hopkins numbers, because that's not who they are. That's just not how they play.
I guess you couldn't really expect that from Jeudy either. So
yeah.
Hope no one's expecting that anyway.
36 pass attempts and 28 rush attempts. So you're right, Gladys. It's going to be pretty even, mostly.
And I mean, I guess to be fair, that was a game where they were leading against a Giants team that Hamid loves to rip on them for how they struggled to move the ball and the poor quarterback play. So again, in games where they need to pass more, where they're behind, that's more the matchups where you're going to play Patrick and Hamler. But I don't think either becomes an every week starter for you.
Their next 2 games are the Jaguars and the Jets, so I don't anticipate them being behind in either of those games. I would be much surprised if they are.
Melvin Gordon becomes a good play both weeks, to be honest. I know Courtney's pretty happy with Fant. You had her on your show, right, Gladys? I'm not misappropriating there. Yeah.
Yes,
I thought so.
She's a nurse.
Yep.
Yep.
She also likes Patrick as well. We got a lot of medical experts here, a nurse and doctor. So we've got a listener, Jeremy Hatter, asking, does anyone know how long Jeudy is out for? So what were they saying? I know, Doc, you're saying best case 4 to 5 weeks, but what would your expectation be if you had to guess? If you're either putting money on it or what do you think?
That feels right to me, like a 4 to 5 weeks kind of best case scenario, Jeremy. So it could be longer. Sometimes these things get complicated. You just kind of have to wait and see. But I would plan to be without him for at least a month and maybe longer.
I know Courtney's thanking Gladys for the comment and all that.
Hi, Courtney.
Evan wants to say sell high on Gordon. So I think that also could be, again, he had a really good game, a big long touchdown run. That might be, sell high might be right now. But certainly I think these next 2 weeks, he's probably going to be pretty productive. These weaker teams where they're going to be super run heavy. But yeah, maybe after those 3 weeks where might be like anytime over these next 3 weeks is probably a good sell high window on Gordon. So that is a good
Maybe,
point.
but nobody wants to believe that Gordon isn't going to just disappear. Like everybody's like, oh, Gordon's going to give up the backfield. Gordon's going to give up the backfield. Javonte Williams' time is coming. Well, so is Christmas, but it's not for a few months. You know, like why don't people want to believe that Melvin Gordon still has a role and is still going to be productive? Like, you know, it's
unfortunately people might not because of that. People might not be willing to buy him, and you might actually be better off just holding him if you don't get the right price either. Too, that could be a case depending on the league.
Maybe,
but yeah, I think
is Williams like Gordon had 3 targets, Williams had 1. Is that a trend, or is Williams supposed to be a good pass catcher out of the backfield?
Williams is actually expected. He's actually even in college. He wasn't used a lot in the passing game, but he is actually a pretty good pass catcher out of the backfield.
He can definitely catch. He's got some wiggle. How's his pass protection though? That's probably going to guide more whether or not he's going to be on the field.
That's what I was getting at. The size is where it becomes a concern. How good of a how good of a protector he's going to be, and that's where Melvin Gordon actually thrives. Even going back to his days with the Chargers, so that's going to be a concern. And that if there's one thing to hold him back, it is his pass protection.
Yeah, I'm holding on to Gordon. I'm not giving him up. I have him too.
Okay. So we'll see as we move on. But Monday Night Football. Here we are.
Hey, wait, before we
night.
Transition to that, we forgot about Thursday Night Football because Michael Gallup left with a calf injury, and they already put him on IR and gave him a 3 to 5 week timetable. So the important thing for this is what it suggests is I think he has a partial tear of his calf. That's my speculation. That this isn't just your kind of run of the mill calf pull, calf strain. I think this might actually be a partial tear of the muscle. And if that's the case, we might not see him. The Cowboys have a week 7 bye. There is a possibility that Gallup is not back until after the bye week. There is a possibility that happens. So given that, and how high powered of an offense the Cowboys are you guys interested in, can I interest you guys in any Cedric Wilson? We have a lovely special today. It's Cedric Wilson under glass. Is anybody buying that? Does anybody want that?
I'm good.
You good?
Yeah, I think he needs more targets for Lamb and Cooper, honestly, and maybe more targets for Zeke. It might, Dalton Schultz, Jarwin. Maybe they use the 2 tight ends more rather than a receiver on the field, but we'll see. I don't know that I necessarily want to pick up Cedric Wilson. So Jeremy's asking, I think, talking about trying to drop him. I think he's talking about Judy. And I was going to ask, talking about, Doc, you're comfortable dropping Raheem Mostert. Are you feeling the same way about Judy? And just to talk about, high ankle sprain horror stories, Michael Thomas suffered an injury, a high ankle sprain, a year ago. I'm pretty sure it was week 1 last year. And
we're still waiting.
He's still not back, right? I mean, he's still, maybe he should have got surgery. Obviously, should have got surgery earlier, but it's that type of time frame. And with the upside, as much as Bridgewater's doing well now, is that going to be the case all season? I don't know that the upside's the highest. So kind of like Mostert, I'm okay dropping Judy as well. And he's asking pick up Elijah Mitchell. I think I definitely do that. He also says Henry Ruggs. I guess Ruggs is a body there. I do think Ruggs this week. I don't know. I'd prioritize Mitchell over Ruggs personally between those two.
Yeah, I agree. But either way, I would be okay with moving on from Jerry Jeudy because, like I said, you're looking at a month, maybe a month and a half, and the worst case scenario is you got a Michael Thomas situation where he just never makes it back and needs surgery, and these things can be really complicated and go bad. And 6 or 7 weeks at the beginning of the year, if you end up making those pickups, think about Mike Davis from last year when CMC went out, and then people that picked up Mike Davis, he ended up being kind of a low-end RB1 for the rest of the year. So these are the times where those pickups that you make have the most potential to return value for you for the rest of the year. So this is when you want to be more active, kind of churning and mining for gold on the waiver wire when there's a lot of potential value that's still out there. So that's I agree with Kyle. That's kind of the way I look at it too.
And one last note on that, it's week 1. Don't blow half your fab on Elijah Mitchell. It's okay if you want to pass on him as well, because every year there are multiple players that end up on the waiver wire that you will find who will be league winners for you. So it's just week 1. Don't necessarily feel obligated to go and spend half your fab or 40% of it on Elijah Mitchell this week.
Jeremy mentioned he was worried as soon as they said high ankle sprain, just saying
Yeah,
tend
it's
to
a good reason to
forever
worry.
again.
Anytime you hear that, it's definitely a red flag injury. There's a couple of them. That's definitely one of them.
All right, so red flag, but to green light go on Monday Night Football. So here we go. Raiders at Ravens, Vegas and Baltimore. And it's 50.5 over under right now, which I guess Dan put in his notes. Again, thanks, Dan, so much for that. It was at earlier in the week, so it's gone down about a half. I wonder with all the injuries and players being out. They also have the Ravens as 4-point favorites. And this is the part of the show where we're going to talk about our Thrive Fantasy. And one of the things we have going for two is a promo code that you can use through Thrive. Now, Thrive, what they do is a series of prop bets, and we're going to cover some of those tonight. And so if you want a free $50 or a match up to $50, you can use the promo code ARMCHAIR on your deposit with Thrive. Whatever you deposit again, up to $50, match that if you use the promo code ARMCHAIR. So you put in $50, they'll give you an extra $50 to use on the site. So you double your money basically right off the bat for signing up, and then to bet on props. Again, some of the ones we'll talk about tonight. So once again, that promo code is ARMCHAIR, and use that on Thrive. So looking at these Thrive props, again, one of the things Dan did today was he put out a bunch of Twitter, and they just kind of variety of the props available through Thrive and kind of pitting one against the other. So what I thought we'd do is props at different positions, and we'll see what everyone thinks about which prop they would prefer, and then what the vote people said on Twitter as well. So just a couple of quick notes, Hamid. I know you wanted to mention the Raiders activating Trey Ragas off the practice squad. I know, speaking of Elijah Mitchell, they were college teammates, and Ragas, I believe, went undrafted.
That's correct.
And so with the Raiders now, kind of their players. So did anyone want to mention anything about Ragas or the Raiders backfield in general before we get into specifics?
I just wanted to clear out that that's 5 active running backs on the roster today who are eligible to play or be in the game. So does that mean it's something to do with Jacobs? I don't know, but it's something to keep your eyes on at least. And it's a little bit concerning that maybe Jacobs is not fully recovered from the illness. Well, maybe not recovered from the illness, but I mean his conditioning may not be 100% there. Is my only concern with it.
Good point.
All right, so we'll get to those prop lines now. So quarterbacks. We've got, first off, Lamar Jackson, his combined total yards, so rushing and passing, at 280.5. Then they also have Derek Carr passing, and this is at over-under of 259.5 yards. So just between those two, anyone want to take a shot at which one they prefer between those two?
Well, as the Raider fan amongst us, I feel like, and shout out to Gerson, a friend of the show, Gerson Aguirre, who's actually in Vegas at the Raiders game. So enjoy, stay safe, and hopefully the Raiders can pull one out for us. But the Raiders defense historically has never been a friend of ours. So I really like that Lamar Jackson over combined yards line. Because I just think there's multiple ways that he could decimate that defense, and that way you kind of have both of them covered. And I'm all about that.
Gladys, any preference between the two quarterbacks?
I actually, with the running back situation that the Ravens have, like the combined total yards over for Lamar Jackson, because I think he's going to be spending a lot of time running on the Raiders defense, and I think he's going to be spending a lot of time trying to hopefully throw to Sammy Watkins on the Raiders because I have Sammy Watkins, so that's a personal note there. So I'm going with Lamar Jackson over 280 combined yards.
Yeah, I like it.
Also, Lamar Jackson never rushed for less than 84 yards on Monday night. I don't know if it's worth anything, but
all right.
Yeah, he loves Monday nights.
So is that your answer there, Hamid?
Yes, Lamar Jackson. I like total Lamar Jackson.
I will say, I would, of the two, I prefer Jackson, but I do like Derek Carr at 259 passing yards, just because, again, what's going with Jacobs, thinking that, again, there are underdogs, so I don't know, we'll get to the game score I'm picking at later, or at least picking the winner, but, I get the sense that they're going to be behind and needing to throw a lot, and the Ravens are probably a tough one. So I could see, based on volume, not so much efficiency, Derek Carr getting to this. So I actually like both lines, but I think we're all unanimous in saying, at least here on the show, we prefer the Jackson line. Twitter, 64% said Jackson. So not, I guess, enough of a disparity. So we're not really a DFS show, but we can take a stab here. Daniel is asking Andrews versus Waller in a GPP, and then Josh Jacobs versus Ty Williams, again GPP. So I forget what it stands for, but I know it's something general. I forget what the other P stands for. I'm horrible at this. The names and initials, but it's tournament games, not so much cash. So you're trying for highest range of outcomes.
If Evan is still watching, I would ask him who has the highest, who's being played the most on both of those. I would go Waller, because is it Marlon Humphreys is out in the secondary, first game, they're at home. If Waller's play percentage isn't that high, if people aren't on Waller, I would go Waller, and there's no way taking either Jacobs or I would go Ty Williams. Because, like Hamid said, I don't know how much Jacobs is going to play. Like, I'm keeping him in my roster, but that's because that's all I have. But if I had a choice, you don't know how much he's playing tonight, and you don't want to get – I would go Ty Williams if those are my two choices.
I'm honestly pulling up the prices right now because I think that obviously factors in. So, so they have Waller at least, again, I'm on DraftKings, so I don't know if you're – sorry, Daniel, if you maybe just let us know about the prices. But they've got Waller at 10,800, Andrews at 9,000.
Okay.
Josh Jacobs at 8,400, and Ty Williams at 800. I think for sure I'm going Williams over Jacobs.
Ty Williams all the way.
All the way.
I would. I think. Okay, he's saying he's on DraftKings, so these prices do apply. I think if same price, we'd all go Williams, right, over Jacobs.
Yeah.
Either way, yep.
Either way, I'm going Williams over Jacobs.
So the fact that he's, a grand and a less, I think, Tyson Williams is definitely the better play than Josh Jacobs. Yeah, I would avoid Josh Jacobs on this showdown slate. I think he's only 600 less than Mark Andrews. I have Mark Andrews. If you can find a way to get both Waller and Andrews in, that's great. They're both good prices, I think. Like the expectation, both are going to be the top target on their teams. Right. I mean, Waller's actually more expensive than Carr, but that almost makes sense. I think based on the price, I mean, it's almost $2,000 difference. I think I'd go Andrews. I think they're going to produce pretty close Andrews against that bad defense. So I would I prefer Andrews. I know, Gladys, you were saying you like the ceiling of Waller. Even if he's a little more expensive, you just think his best weapon, right? He's going to get all the volume anyway.
Yeah, well, especially if you're going Lamar Jackson and you're going to, you'd have to come back with someone from the Raiders if you are going heavy on the Baltimore Ravens, and Waller's the only person I can think of that I would trust to come back with on the Raiders.
Yeah, it would be pretty expensive to get both in, but yeah, it is possible. If you're gonna go overload with the two most expensive players, Jackson and Waller does make sense. They probably will be the two highest scoring fantasy players in this game. Maybe Derek Carr out there and Waller, who knows? We'll get to the running back props now. Talking so much about Tyson Williams, and that is one of our props here. Is Williams versus Josh Jacobs. So Thrive has Williams over 53.5 rush yards and Josh Jacobs at 68.5. We'll leave it quick. Everyone's taking Williams here, right?
Yes. I am. Yeah.
I mean, do we have to take one of each, or do we can you abstain and then take a different one?
Well, you can say you can say neither, but we are just asking. I think that the preference on which
unless somebody puts a gun to my head, I'm staying away from this one. I don't have a strong feeling about it one way or the other. And there's he's a rookie, and they have other guys on the roster. So you saw what happened with Rojo, right? He fumbles and then he grabs the bench with both hands for the rest of the game. I want no part of any of that. He's an unproven commodity. So the best running back on that team is Lamar Jackson. So just because Tyson Williams is out there and he's lining up in the running where the place where the running back usually stands, that doesn't necessarily mean anything's going to happen as far as him getting the ball. And there's a lot of pathways to him not doing anything, including like he fumbles, he gets hurt. Like I'm out.
You wouldn't go under on Josh Jacobs, the 68.5?
Yeah,
I would probably would lean that before I would do anything else. But the one I really liked was the combined yards for Kenyon Drake. I like that one a lot more as far as the multiple pathways to get there, assuming that Josh Jacobs isn't going to be as involved.
Just to add to that, the Raiders did allow the 7th most rushing yards and the 4th most rushing touchdowns to the running back position last year. And
well, Latavius Murray's there too.
Right, but he's active as of today, and he's not even a week into his time with the Raiders.
So and what? Here, we hand you the ball. There's the hole. Go hit it, big guy. Like he's been in training camp with the Saints, all year. So it's not like he's not in game shape. And like I said, it's like he's a running back too. He's a veteran. This guy he's a rookie, or he's a young player. So yeah, he's been there, but they weren't counting on him to be involved. Like everybody else basically was in a bus that went off a cliff. Like he's literally the last man standing. They signed 18 guys off the street, and he's the only one that has actually been a member of the team since the beginning of training camp. So it's not so much that they have faith in him as much as he's the guy that's still there.
And I think, Doc, you kind of brought up something where you wanted to kind of just avoid them. You didn't really want to take the unders either. I tend to if I'm picking, I avoid going with unders. I try to, what are the ones that are going to go over, and I try and just focus on those. So is there a bit of that to your game as well when it comes to throwing?
I mean, what I learned last year, remember Izzy Ortiz, Dan's friend? He was all about the unders, and I always thought that was kind of an interesting, like, contrarian play, but he played so many unders, and he did really well. So that kind of opened my eyes to the possibility of doing that. I know it feels better to have an over because once the over hits, then you're good. Whereas if you bet an under, then you got to sweat it out for the whole game. So there is that component of it. It feels better to have an over because you feel like one big play and I can relax and I won the bet. But, kind of taking that into account, like that's my own personal preference. Yeah. But I don't know if it's actually a winning play. It just feels better. And what feels good isn't necessarily productive or good. It just feels comfortable. Comfort is not always a good thing.
And I went a little out of my comfort level. So just a little bit of dynasty talk here. We've talked about everything, DFS, prop lines, and fantasy in general. But in the dynasty league, we're all in together. I actually traded my first round pick next year for Tyson Williams.
I was really impressed that you did that because that's definitely a flag planting move. Like that's a bold move.
Yeah, he has an opportunity tonight to really take over. Yes, those other guys are there, but like all of them are so old. Like Bell, Freeman, and they are.
There. Latavius Murray's 31. That's not old.
Murray's actually the oldest one there, and yet he looks like the spryest and youngest. Like in terms of he still has left in his game, whereas like what Freeman and Bell showed last year, I'm not worried.
Bell's 29 or 30. He did you hear him? He said those guys are so old. Like that actually, I actually got chest pain when he said
compared
that.
to Tyson.
Hurt my heart.
Right? I'm comparing it to who's, as you mentioned, Doc, super young. I think he was a rookie last year, so he's 23, 24. That's a whole running back lifespan between him and those other guys.
Oh,
so I think that's the. I'm kind of leaning there, and I just wanted to be aggressive, get ahead, knowing that I'll be the first one to do it and give a price where I knew I was the highest bidder. I don't know if there's anyone else bidding, but
price. That was a big boy price. That first round pick, that was a big boy move.
Yeah, and this is me pushing all the chips in.
I'm kind of impressed by that. I'm gonna be honest with you. I thought you were gonna. Send some of those bullshit trade offers that you sent my way, but you actually made a real solid, honest to goodness move. Like you made a bold move. I appreciate that.
Well, and again, I think if having Josh Jacobs not having him anymore, I think maybe push that in. Wanted to get that RB3 spot solidified, but we'll move away from the dynasty. But just kind of I'm just kind of sharing that to show my confidence level in Williams. So I'd be okay with that rush yard line, but I'm more confident in the quarterback lines, to be fair, than the running back. But we'll move on to the wide receivers now, or the pass catchers in general, because we'll do this all together. So we've got Marquise Brown, 4.5 receptions over under. And then we have the tight ends with their receiving yards. Mark Andrews is at 58.5. Darren Waller at 62.5. And then back with the Raiders, Bryan Edwards at 3.5 receptions. So, Gladys, what's your favorite line out of those 4, whether it's over or under?
Mark Andrews over is my favorite of the 4 on the yards. 58.5 receiving yards, 1 big play, and he's over that. If we're expecting Lamar to go over 280 combined yards, and we're expecting Mark Andrews to be the leading target of those 280 combined yards, I think that 58.5 receiving yards is a safe bet that he will go over that. Easily. I'm going with that all day. That's what I'd go with, Courtney.
Hamid.
I'm at the casino.
See, this is where I got leaning with the doc a little bit here. When it comes to the Ravens pass catchers, it could be so run heavy for all we know, and they may not even need the passing game as much. It's just it's hard for me to trust the Ravens pass catchers, and it's more because of the game script and what to expect. I personally would stay away from it, but although I do see it being enticing, given how low it is, under 60 yards is pretty easy to get, but I'm personally staying away from it.
So for the Raider lines, would you take over on either Waller at that 62.5? Or
from a pass catching standpoint, I'm not touching the line at all.
Interesting. Okay, so it sounds like you only want Lamar Jackson over. The player you're really interested in is just Lamar Jackson.
Lamar Jackson over, and I would take Tyson Williams over as well.
Okay, on the rush yards there. Okay, you're thinking Ravens win, big run heavy game. Doc, pass catchers, is there a line you prefer? Again, you can take the under too, but
yeah, for sure. I like the Darren Waller over. He is that offense, or at least he has been historically. I think the Raiders are going to be playing from behind, and he's a problem. Like he's gonna be that offense. If they're going to be from behind and Derek Carr is going to be throwing the ball, I think a lot of them are going to be going to him. So that's the one that really I feel like he's the best player on that offense, and he's going to be Derek Carr's has eyes for him. So he's had games where he's had 180, 200 yards. So 60, 68, 62 and a half. Like I'll take my shot on that as opposed to any of the other ones.
So Darren Waller has not hit the over 62.5. If this was last year, you would have a 50% chance of hitting it. So he literally 8 games over, his 8 games he was under. So you have a 50% shot of hitting the over 62.5. You went with that.
50% of the time, it works every time.
Courtney's talking about. So Gladys already referenced this. Courtney's at a casino, and I guess she's got a line at the casino over under 6 receptions for Waller. I like that even more than the yards.
I like that more. I
like both tight ends on yards. So if you can get that, if you can get that, Courtney, go for that. But I actually like both tight ends for the yards. Between Andrews at 58.5, Waller at 62.5. I think, to Hamid's credit, the Ravens, I think there's more of a risk that Andrews doesn't hit it if they get really run heavy. Like I don't see the Raiders coming in there and winning this game to where they're not going to pass the ball to Waller. Like I feel like even when they're up, he's still involved because he's their best player. So I think he'll hit the 62.5.
I feel like the Ravens want to show that they're more than one-dimensional, and I think that's their goal this year, is to show that they're more than just a running team. So I think even if they are ahead, they're still going to let Jackson pass the ball.
Also, just keep in mind, so last year, Waller missed the over at these receptions in 9 games. Remember another thing, Edwards and Ruggs both were kind of non-factors last year. If they can take that next step, we may see potentially Waller missing the over here, and we may even see a push potentially, because if Edwards and Ruggs take that next step, that's the big question. They need to utilize Ruggs better, and we need to see Edwards play to his potential, which he has a ton of. So
I know our co-host, our absent co-host, in Edwards. He's got Edwards over, giddy up. And that's about 5 exclamation marks, which is more than his over-under. His over-under is only 3.5. So I know Dan's saying like he's calling it as 5 catches or 6 catches. Gladys, did you want to say anything?
Nope, unsaid it all. Yep, Courtney, please keep us posted on your wins.
Yeah, yes. Courtney's saying she'll keep us posted, and hopefully we help. And so just in terms of again, wins. Winning the vote, there was Darren Waller. 45% of the vote on Twitter for that Waller over winning that. In the polls early on, it seemed like it was mostly Waller, Andrews for the votes. And so I guess one thing I forgot to mention was actually in that running back, Tyson Williams won it with 50% of the vote, but it's because there was actually a third prop in that poll. Kenyon Drake combined rushing and receiving yards at 45.5. So sorry, I forgot to mention that one.
Mine. I'm all over that one. That's the one I want.
Kenyon Drake.
Yeah.
Say that again. Kenyon Drake
combined 45.5 yards, rushing and passing.
Oh, yeah. You going over?
Yeah. I think
all the way. That's the one I want. Out of all the other ones, I'll take Kenyon Drake combined. A lot of pathways to get it. Josh Jacobs is under the weather potentially, so game script shouldn't be a factor. Like I think he's going to be involved, so I'm all about that one.
I personally still stay away from pass catching ones, but that's a combined one, so that is really enticing, and it's under 50. So absolutely, I think that is pretty safe.
I like that one too. Is it too late? No.
Yeah, I think I don't know. Again, I'm the guy that just paid a first for him, so I think I'd still take the Williams. But that again, that's me. Yeah. I don't know how many people are out there paying first for him. I've heard a lot of
that's framing bias. That's framing bias right there, or that's endowment effect. Because now he's worth more to you than he is to anybody else.
Well, to be fair, I also paid a first thinking, okay, he's going to be in for a big game this week, right?
Exactly. He wants that big game to justify the value he paid.
Yeah, he will. But we'll see. Or the 22 class is all so awful that it doesn't matter. Maybe that's probably not going to be the case. Sorry, 22 rookies. But okay, so what's the just quickly? We'll go around the room here. But what was your favorite line that we talked about for all the props? If you just had to pick one, whether it's over or under, what one would you pick?
I'm going Kenyon Drake. The Kenyon Drake prop.
So at the last minute.
Yeah. Swooped right in there. Right in there.
I agree with Gladys. That's my favorite one. Just because of multiple pathways to get there, it seems like it's a low number. There's a lot of different ways that it could hit. So I'm with that one.
I like that one. And I like the tie. If I had to pick one only, I'd probably go. I probably have to agree. Kenyon Drake is the safest one. That's such. I
think I'd still take Lamar Jackson combined, just because that Raiders defense really isn't that good. I think he'll get upward of 300 yards, however he wants. So I think I would still take. Close. Yeah, it might, and maybe the team is so effective that he doesn't need to run it a ton. Like there is risk there, but I think I'd still favor Jackson. Now I will say one thing I noticed just before we started. Actually, I'm just on the site now, and it still has it. Lamar Jackson at 7 rushing yards. If you can get his rush yards alone, I think I like that even more than the combined yards. But
that's less than any other Monday night game he's played, by the way. So that's should be statistically a smash.
So I'm cheating there because it wasn't listed on the show, but I'll keep it with the Lamar combined yards. But now we'll end with predictions. So again, it's and we'll give predictions on the total if you want, but also the spread. So it's 50.5 combined points total between the two teams, and then the Ravens winning by 4. So who would like to begin?
Oof.
I'm going under, and the Ravens win by more than 4.
As a Raiders fan, I'm gonna abstain from making a prediction here.
That's fair.
All right. So
my prediction is that Gerson at the game is going to have lots of beer, and he's going to lose his voice from yelling so much. And that's my parlay. Is Gerson has plenty of beers, has lots of fun, and loses his voice. That's my 3-way parlay.
Okay,
I'm looking for that over under. What's the over under on? Yeah, what's the over under on Gerson number of drinks?
I'm not touching that one.
He's 0.
No line. There's no line on that one. I'm not touching that one.
Oh, okay. They're too scared. I would probably take whatever the line is. I'd probably take the over. Again, I always like going on the overs. But okay. So Hamid, what would you pick here? Over under on the 55?
I would take the under.
50.5.
I would take the under, but I think I don't think the Ravens cover, and here's the only reason why. The Marcus Peters loss is huge. Not only that, the Ravens secondary was the weak point of the defense to begin with coming into the season. So I think the wide receivers do have an opportunity to excel here and keeping this game close, which is why I think the Ravens do not cover, and I'll take the under.
18, is that 18
So
drinks for
Gerson-
Gerson?
I think that's what Dan's saying. That
Dan?
line,
I'm going under.
I might. I don't know. That's close. I think I might stay away from that one. I'll stick with the Lamar yards. But so okay. So for the game, I'm going to take the over. And like what Hamid's saying, the Ravens secondary struggling, so I think the Raiders can score enough points to keep it interesting. But I also don't know how the Raiders are going to stop the Ravens. Like that defense is pretty atrocious, and I don't think that Andrews. They could almost cover this by themselves. We've seen them do it before week one. I mean, that game against – well, think about that Miami game 2 years ago, his MVP season week one. Didn't they score 50? Or I think they got close to that. So I'm going to take the over and the Ravens covering the spread.
Okay.
Interesting.
All right.
Come on, Doc.
So, and Dan's saying over on the beers. Can you at least give the over-under on Gerson's alcoholic beverages?
I don't. Absolutely not.
I'm taking the under on 18 for tonight. Only for tonight, not just.
I don't want to give him a challenge that he feels like he has to surpass. So I just want him to go have a good time. I don't want to put any unnecessary hurdles in front of him.
Well, I've seen him in the comments, so he might not know about this yet. So this will be something he'll the next day.
I do have an over under that I'd like to talk about. So for anybody out there that took the over on 0.5 times, I was going to mention what a monster game Jared Goff had to Hamid. Then you just won the bet because there you go, baby. 3 putties over 300 yards. Who's the man? Who's the man? Jared Goff's the man. That's who the man is. Come on, man.
When I told Jeff I was going to be on the show and I saw your name on it, I knew it was going to be brought up. I just knew it. And I thought of you every time.
Well, you were right.
In that game.
You were right. You're gonna get that signed Goff jersey before the end of the year if I got anything to say about it.
I did. Hey, I'm happy he's throwing touchdowns because I did take the over on 28 touchdowns. Remember?
Yeah. I said it was like 26 and a half. I thought you guys were going under for sure. You were like, oh, he
took the over there.
I set a little trap for you, a little bear trap, but you didn't walk into it.
Bear trap.
All right. Well, yeah, we don't want anyone getting hurt in bear traps now. Everyone here happy, healthy. I think Dan will be coming back next week. I won't be, but very capable hands here, clearly. And well, I think we would have done fine as 3. Always nice to have 4. Complete the square, the box. And Hamid, you filled in beautifully. So why don't you let the people know they can find and follow you and some of the great.
Thursday nights you can find me on the Dynasty Gambit where we talk about the weekly impacts of players from a Dynasty standpoint and players to look out for, players that we like a lot, players that we don't like a lot from a Dynasty standpoint based on performance and what's going on even practices and training camp. Also, you can find me on Sundays with Gladys to answer all your start-sit questions, any injury updates, any news that are breaking throughout the week. Our sleepers and players that we do love and not like as well. I'm on Twitter, FFJunk85. Please reach out to me for any statistical information you want because that's what I love doing.
Thursday night, the Dynasty Gambit, great show. Obviously, there's the Armchair Show on Wednesdays and the DFS version Friday night. The Fantasy Cheat Sheet, which includes, among others, Evan Ritter, who is part of our show tonight as part of the audience. So appreciate the comments, Evan, and appreciate the work on the Fantasy Cheat Sheet. It was a great first episode and looking forward to that all season. Great going for 2 live shows. So again, here on the 2-point conversion, we've got the Dr. James Ferretti at TFSDoc, the Fantasy Sports Doc for that. So it's a easy Twitter. Anything else you want to plug, Doc?
I wanted to thank Hamid for coming on, even though he knew I was gonna give him some Jared Goff, give him some stuff about that. But thanks for coming on here and joining us. One of the hardest working people at Going for 2, and we got a lot of hardworking people there. Oh, she got her copy. All right. You can find me on Twitter at TFSDoc here every Monday night for the rest of the season, talking about injuries with this fine group of folks. And if you want to learn more about injuries as the season goes on, I do have a book out. It's called Injuries Suck, but Your Fantasy Team Doesn't Have to. There it is. It's available on Amazon. It's about 100 pages of talking about injury terminology, how to read between the lines of different injuries, timetables, how to calculate player values, and just get really a lot better about being able to predict how injuries are going to affect your team and what to do about it. So e-version, print version, online on Amazon. Check it out. 4.9 aggregate score on Amazon. I think you will enjoy it. And that's it. It's great to be back. Great to be back for week 1. So good to see all you guys. And looking forward to the Monday night game. And go Raiders.
You just have to throw the numbers out, Hamid, right? Since he loves numbers so much.
Hamid is the numbers guy.
Anyway, Courtney wishing us,
Courtney, good luck in the casino.
Good luck in the casino.
Yep.
Smash it.
Thank you, everyone. Yeah, thanks for everyone for tuning in. Listening, watching all the great stuff we have to show. I know Gladys, you got the hat crew going. You got the SFB hat. I got the SFB shirt. So Scott Fish. You were talking a bit about the Scott Fish rosters. Good luck to everyone in that tournament and to all their fantasy tournaments. But Gladys, anything you want to say?
No, just I'm happy to be back on the Monday night. Miss you, Dan. Hamid, thanks for filling in. Great, as always, that you are. Wonderful. And, you can come see me and Hamid and Evan and Garrison when he sobers up Sunday but he probably won't be sober Sunday, so I don't know why I even said that. Sunday mornings at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, and we will give you the start set information that you need. We'll give you DFS information that you need, and in case you guys didn't tune in last Sunday, you didn't know that Hamid gave you the great information of picking up Elijah Mitchell and putting him in your lineup. Evan told you to fade Kyle Pitts in the DFS, so these guys know what they're doing. Come read me on Going for Two Live. I do the start sit article there, and then on Rotoballer, the Red Zone, and on LFAB Network, the Hots. But I am so happy to be back with you guys on Monday night. You guys are wonderful. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Gladys. And on behalf of Hamid, Dr. Ferretti, Gladys, I'm Kyle Senra at Senra Says. You can check out all the great Going for Two Lives on Twitter at Going for Two Live, all the great articles and content in general at Going4_2. Happy Monday Night Football. I think the game has kicked off now.
That's it. We're back. Week 1. Week 1. We're back.
Bye, guys.
Enjoy the game.
I will see you all week 3, but definitely next week for week 2, be sure to check out the 2-point